There will be 42,300 deer gun licenses available in 2025. Today, we're visiting with Wildlife Division Chief Casey Anderson to go over all the details. I'm Mike Anderson with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Casey, are deer numbers up this year or are they down?
For the most part, deer numbers are down. Our licenses has dropped about 7,800 licenses, which is the lowest it's been in a long time. And so, yeah, that's where we're sitting at this point.
The Game and Fish Department manages the deer herd by units.
Yeah, so we manage the deer herds by units, and the units are kind of set up to resemble similar landscapes within those units, similar types of habitats and deer in more of a population basis than an individual number of critters.
Casey, why are the numbers down?
So there's a multitude of reasons. We've had some EHD in the past. Of course, 4 years ago, maybe 5, we had that large EHD outbreak along the Missouri River. That really dropped the whitetail population. And then shortly after that, we had the bad winter 2.5 years ago. And so that further dropped them or further put stress on them. And so they just haven't had the ability to bounce back that we would like to see. And so, yeah, license numbers are reflecting that.
Casey, since the bad winter, we've had 2 nice winters. How does that play into the numbers?
So you'd hope that they would bounce back, but I think what we're seeing is the amount of habitat on the landscape isn't conducive to an easy bounce back. The other thing that's happened with these 2 easy winters, they've kind of been followed by, especially sporadically across the state, some drought conditions, some severe to moderate drought conditions, even some drought conditions that end up coming later in the fall, which obviously hampers deer's ability to put on energy stores for the next winter, and maybe even maintain and carry fawns to survival. And so, yeah, it's kind of been a multitude of things, and then with EHD in some areas on top of that, the deer populations just haven't been able to bounce back.
Let's talk whitetail numbers. EHD primarily affects whitetail numbers.
Yeah, so EHD really, since the bad one along the Missouri River, we've kind of had like little sporadic outbreaks out west. And so that's kind of been holding those whitetail populations at a lower level. Habitat conditions out west aren't near as dire as they are when you go east of the Missouri River. But still with, compounding drought, compounding some EHD, which EHD thrives in drought in a lot of cases, it has just kept those whitetail populations from really bouncing back or having the opportunity to.
Okay. How do we determine the number of licenses we're going to make available?
So we have a multitude of ways that we use to determine licenses. A lot of it has to do with hunter-harvest surveys. We have a number of other surveys that we do as far as to hunters. We have a mail carrier survey, siteability, opening weekend survey that we send to a random number of hunters. How many deer are you seeing? What'd you see? That kind of thing. And then we have our winter aerial surveys, which a blessing and a curse. In the easy winters, we haven't had the opportunity to do that because we need certain conditions of 12 inches on the level of snow to count deer, but that also means that they shouldn't be struggling as much throughout the winter because we weren't able to fly. And so, it's been a couple years since we've had that, so we've had to use many of our other types of hunter-harvest surveys and things like that to kind of determine where the population is and where it's trending.
Okay. Let's move into mule deer numbers. How are the mule deer doing in North Dakota?
So yeah, mule deer, uniquely, we can survey those twice a year. They are easy to spot in the Badlands with their white rump as long as the leaves are off of trees, and so we do a survey in the spring and the fall. And those numbers are slightly down from last year, and they're still below the long-term average. And so there won't be any more licenses, but we're going to hold steady for this year. And we should start seeing a rebound on mule deer. Obviously, the Badlands hasn't changed a terrible lot, but they have been struggling with some tough droughts the last couple of years after those easy winters. So that plays into fawning and fawn recruitment.
Okay, let's move into what's it going to take to get these numbers back going in the right direction, Casey.
So obviously, help from Mother Nature is one of our biggest things, but we have to get habitat on the landscape. Even when Mother Nature gives us an advantage, if the habitat isn't there to successfully have a fawn and successfully protect it, and then the nutrition to be able to raise it, and the nutrition to be able to get through the winter, it's going to take habitat for all aspects of a deer's life cycle to really get us back to numbers that some people only remember as the highest they've ever been. They weren't, it's far enough out now in the early 2000s that you get to the point where people have forgotten when numbers were this low.
Let's go into habitat more. What type of habitat, you say through the whole deer life cycle, what type of habitat is the most important to deer?
So there isn't one type that's the most important to deer. It's food, water, space, and shelter. Back to the basics of hunter ed habitat type of words that people had to memorize when they took hunter ed. But realistically, it takes, good fawning cover is probably one of the biggest ones for when Mother Nature helps us out to rebound. And obviously you got to have, winter cover at some level to get us through the winter. And then, food and shelter throughout all of those seasons really do, it's got to be a conglomerate of all. It can't just be where we find them necessarily when we go hunting all the time. When you think of that cornfield or something that you may be hunting by when you're harvesting deer, those cornfields don't raise a fawn. And so those types of, shifts on the landscape have really hampered the ability of white-tailed deer to bounce back.
So over the last decade, we've lost over 2 million acres of CRP and a bunch of shelter belts and so forth. We need to start bringing some of that back.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take private landowners to want it to come back. In North Dakota, we are 90+% privately owned, and landowners need to make a decision on their property for one reason or the other. And so, if we aren't able to get those habitat aspects back on the landscape, we're probably looking at closer to a new norm than a lot of us would hope to. But the Game and Fish Department really looks at some ways that we can put habitat on the landscape, most bang for our buck in those areas where, the dollars you spend are going to raise the most critters. And so we're really working hard with our private lands crew and even our wildlife management areas to really kind of help maximize all of that to the best of our ability and the best of our dollars that we have available.
Is there certain parts of the state that is worse than others as far as habitat?
I think the eastern side of the state has less habitat noticeably, but throughout units, there's going to be pockets where obviously habitat is in short order and other pockets where you'll find the deer when there's habitat.
Okay. When's the deadline to apply?
So June 4th is the deadline to apply, and you have to apply online, either through our app or our website. And so, there's still some opportunity out there if you get drawn. There'll be less tags on the landscape, but if you get drawn, you'll probably have less competition on the landscape as well.
A lot of great information, Casey. Thank you.